What is going on out there, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot for Watchalong Wrestling. It is officially WrestleMania week, and with that, we've been having so much fun here on the channel. And again, today we're excited to relive some of the old past. We just uploaded our video looking at the 10-year anniversary of WrestleMania 29, and now we're going to fast forward to the 5-year anniversary of WrestleMania 34. And I couldn't do it without Alex Doriot joining us today from the Talking Taker podcast. Alex, how are you doing today?
I'm doing excellent. Looking forward to reliving this one with you. Got to be there in person for this one. And I don't know. We'll talk about it. I wonder what your thoughts are on it. I kind of wonder what the viewers' consensus is on this one, how it stands up, how it holds the test of time. I think there's a lot of fun stuff on there. A lot of stuff that kind of drags. It's a super long show, but a lot of fun stuff to talk about. And we'll dive into it here.
Yeah. I mean, we are Watchalong Wrestling, but we will not be doing a watch-along
No.
because we'd be here for about 6 hours, more than 6 hours if we wanted to get some of the pre-show matches in. But Alex, looking back at WrestleMania and the history of WrestleMania, what are some of your favorite WrestleMania matches? Obviously, you guys do a podcast all about The Undertaker, the greatest wrestler of all time, if you will. And so, obviously, he is synonymous with WrestleMania with his long undefeated streak. What are some of your favorite memories when you first hear of WrestleMania?
My first WrestleMania that I ever watched live was Mania 9 in 1993. I was 7 years old. So I got into wrestling when I was about 5 years old. And that was actually the very first pay-per-view I ever ordered. And so I know that one kind of ranks down there in the bottom tier of WrestleManias. But for me, it's like peak nostalgia for me because it was the first one I ever watched. I love the whole outdoor environment of it, the toga party and everything, even though there's not a lot of great wrestling on there. But the very next year, WrestleMania 10, that opening match with Bret Hart and Owen Hart, the ladder match gets a lot of love and it is awesome. It's one of my favorite matches too. But Bret versus Owen that opened WrestleMania 10 is, depending on the day that you ask me, my favorite wrestling match of all time. It's perfect storytelling. It's perfect in-ring action. The twist ending of Owen actually getting that win over Bret, but then Bret, usurps him and wins the title later on in the night. Oh man, it's incredible. To me, wrestling's never been better than that in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, the Undertaker streak, Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, of course, both of those. I love the gimmick battle royal from WrestleMania 17. That's one I think of when I think of WrestleMania. It's one I still go back and rewatch and enjoy. And that's the great thing about WrestleMania is, yes, there's the peak wrestling in-ring technical competition, but then you got ladder matches, you've got all the gimmicks and all the characters. That's what really makes a great WrestleMania, in my opinion, is having all that variety in there.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, and I'm with you. I think our wrestling fandom is kind of ran parallel. I think we were born in the same year, and I started my first wrestling memory is probably the Christmas 1990 when I started getting all my Hasbros for the first time. And the first WrestleMania and first pay-per-view I remember was WrestleMania 7 when my parents that whole day were working on something in the house. I couldn't figure out what it was. They wouldn't tell me what it was, and it was cable. They were getting it installed so that they could order the pay-per-view for WrestleMania 7. And even though that WrestleMania 7 is by no means a good show, it is one that, it's an okay show, but it's one that for me, I always am super nostalgic. I always have a hard time hating on those older ones from that era, including WrestleMania 9. When we went to Vegas for the first time, first thing I wanted to do was go to Caesar's Palace. I want to walk around in the shops because in that episode of Superstars, they're walking around in the shops.
Yep.
And I wanted to go to the Tunnel of Love where Triple H and Stephanie McMahon got married. So, for me, those were the big things. And I'm completely with you. Even though those things are a little corny, I always they hold a special place for me.
Hey, Mania 7's got Macho and Warrior, which is also up there, probably in my top 10 all-time matches. I mean, that match rules.
That's a good one. And I love the opener, actually. The Rockers against Haku and the Barbarians.
That's so good.
Such a good match.
Yes.
The Rockers at that point were having these really good matches to kill. I remember at Royal Rumble 91, I think it was. They took on Orient Express, and that's an awesome match. They were just this random little team that was having these great matches way ahead of time with all these people. So That's good stuff. But yeah, in looking ahead and looking at 2018, where are you? What I always like to ask people is, where are you this stage of your life? If you could think back to early 2018 and getting ready for this show, what were you? I guess what memories do you have?
Yeah, that's like it's actually kind of a loaded question because it's I remember it extremely well. I mean, I know it was only 5 years ago, but December 2017, I actually lost my job, and it was pretty. It was a difficult time. It was very unexpected. Don't need to go into all of that, but I was in a pretty low place in early 2018. And so I didn't get another full-time job for till about September of 2018. So my wife was supporting us, and I had a lot of time at home to just sit and watch wrestling in between, trying to drive Uber and just to pick up little odd jobs and stuff. So getting to go to this WrestleMania, and I can tell the story now, or if you want to wait. It was very unexpected, but it was a great bit of excitement and hope in my life for a few days, because I was very depressed and very at a low point in my life for sure.
Yeah, wow. I should have asked you before we got on.
Oh, I don't mind talking about it. No,
yeah.
No problem.
Thank you for sharing it. And hey, we've all been there. It's something happen, and it's a really tough thing to get through. I just recently went through it myself, where it was like, I thought I landed my dream job, and then boom, out of nowhere, it's like, we're going to restructure you, we're going to move you here, and I'm not going to do that, and I'm looking for something else. So it is that's really tough. But I feel like that, hopefully in hindsight, it builds us makes us who we are, makes us a little stronger.
Absolutely.
And that's crazy. Yeah. 2018, this time for me, it was a random time. It was really an interesting time in my life because I had just gotten married. We got married March 24th, 2018. So we just celebrated our 5-year anniversary as we recorded 2 days ago.
Happy anniversary. Yep. Thank
you. And leading up to this, I did a bachelor party with all of my good friends down in, we did Epcot, Drink Around the World, in Disney World. So went down there for a couple of days, and my brother-in-law was too young to join us. He's only now 22. So 5 years ago was 17. So he wanted to do something else for that. So he was like, he really wanted to do the Royal Rumble. Couldn't get Rumble tickets for the life of me. So we went to Raw 25. So came back, did Raw 25. That show, I don't know if you remember it all, was just not very good. Like, it was disjointed. They had the two different buildings.
We were at the
more stuff, but it was just weird.
Raw 30 was a lot better than Raw 25.
Right. That was why Raw 30, I was like, I don't know, because Raw 25 was kind of rough. But it ended up where we ended up getting tickets for Rumble 2 days later. They put on some extra tickets. So then we planned to go, and basically my wife, myself, and her brother went to the Royal Rumble. Never done a full breakdown on it. Was planning to this year, just didn't ran out of time. But in the ending of that, we were huge Ronda Rousey fans. So obviously the end of Royal Rumble 2018, Ronda shows up, and we just lose our minds. And at this stage, we had already planned that we were not going to do WrestleMania this year because we were getting married. We were doing our honeymoon was going to be like a 2-week in South Africa. So I already needed to go and get that approved by my job. And so we were like, we're not going to do New Orleans. We just did it for WrestleMania 30. We're going to sit this one out. Ronda shows up, everything changes. And we're like, oh, there goes the backdrop.
You said it was going to happen.
I heard it starting to crackle in the back. And I was like, man, this is on borrowed time. So it's going to completely fall here in a second. And then we'll pretend it was never there. But at least it was there from the beginning of it. Yeah. I told them, you know what, I'll put it out of the in any event. There it goes. So I even said, I was like, I've got to come up with some backdrop. Alex always has this really cool stuff. His area looks so cool behind him. I've got to have something on the blank wall. Not meant to be, though, I guess. It was no good. So anyway, Ronda comes out. It was one of these things where we were at the Rumble, and once the Rumble ended, my wife bailed, ran down to go to the restroom to try to beat, thinking like it was over. And so Oscar ran, she had to run to the restroom, and then Ronda comes, we called her, she comes storming back in, and we just go nuts, and we're like, all right, we've got to go. Now we've got to go to Mania. So went into work and requested off another time. And in retrospect, now that I'm a little like further along in my career, it was a little nervy of me. Like, they just approved me to go away for 2 weeks in a few months. Here I come, like, hey, I want another trip here before that.
Right.
But I got it approved. They were like, all right, you have this time off. The company was like really big on work-life balance. I wasn't getting paid. It wasn't like big on pay or anything like that. They were like, their big thing was you have all this boatload of time off. And that's one of the reasons I stayed with the company for so long. So I was thinking, all right, I'm into this. I'm going to WrestleMania. And then a couple weeks out, my boss said to me, listen, I hate to do this to you, but we need you to cover a job fair. It conflicts with that time. I don't have anyone else to do it. I need to pull back on your paid time off.
Dang.
And it was rough. I was really upset. And it's because of the fact that it was our first trip as a married couple. We're, started the idea that we're going to be able to walk around New Orleans with the just married type stuff.
Oh, man. Yeah.
All that. We were really into that idea. And then she pulls it back and was like, I hate to do it. We're still going to be able to obviously to accommodate the honeymoon, but because this is just a random extra thing. And I kept thinking, like, why didn't I just call out? If I had just called out, but it would have looked worse because it would have been like last minute, depending
True.
on and I don't like doing that because then it's also like I would then have to act like I'm planning on doing something and then not do it. I'm
the same way. I've always had a hard time with that. Even as a kid, like working service jobs, I always had like the worst guilt about trying to do something like that. Yep, same way.
Yeah, it's and even like when I was on your guys' show here, that's coming up talking about WrestleMania 29. I did work WrestleMania 29, but when I called out, I told them I had this opportunity to work with WrestleMania 29. Like, I was honest with them. I didn't just say, hey, whatever. So yeah, I always had a hard time with it, but it was what it was. But this was like a shell shock for me and my wife because we had gone to WrestleManias 30 through 33. So I kept saying this is going to be the one for the thumb. I mean, cry me, right? I've been to 4 WrestleManias. I realize this is first world problems at its finest here. But I, at the same time, it was definitely a bummer because I was excited about getting down there and yeah, so that was definitely tough. And so I was left now needing to my WrestleMania story here is I'm now left to trying for the first time since 28, needing to try to like make it where I need to try to make the most of this show from home, which is definitely a weird deal for me.
The streak was over.
It was over. It was over, and yeah, it was. But why don't you get into? So you said you had found out you were going to this show pretty last minute.
Pretty last minute. I think maybe 3 weeks out, 2 to 3 weeks out. I want to say probably 3. Anyway, had no plans to go. Didn't have any money. Actually was kind of, we were doing the podcast, but like my interest in kind of modern wrestling was really, really low. I was watching a little bit, but definitely was not even considering going to WrestleMania. So I lived in Atlanta at the time, and there was a radio show on Wednesday nights, Pro Wrestling Wednesdays on the sports radio station in Atlanta, hosted by Tony Schiavone. This is pre-AEW.
Wow.
He hosted a weekly wrestling radio show. This was when he was doing the podcast with Conrad too. So he was, his interest in wrestling was a little bit more, and his little profile was rising up a little bit. So I listened to that on Wednesday nights sometimes if I was driving around or whatever. And I heard, okay, they're going to be doing a live show at this bar in Atlanta, and they're going to be giving away WrestleMania tickets at this show. And it was going to be a costume contest. So you had to show up in your best wrestling costume. You're going to have to cut a promo with Tony Schiavone, and the best one was going to win tickets. Now, I know I host a podcast. I know I seem real comfortable on camera, but that's me in my basement right here. Actually going out in public and doing that, had a lot of anxiety about it. But like I said, we had just started the podcast. It seemed like The Undertaker was going to be there and have a pretty significant role. So I kept hearing these commercials for this thing, and I'm like, you know what? I should try to go. I should try to go and just see what happens. I made my wife go with me because there was no way I was doing it by myself. And I went with my go-to, which is I went as Hulk Hogan. I've been Hulk Hogan for Halloween like half a dozen times in my life. That's always my go-to. Say what?
I said, who hasn't been Hulk Hogan at some point? If you're wrestling, you got to be.
Go to Walmart. I get a plain yellow shirt. I get a red Sharpie. I draw Hulk rules on there. I got some yellow gym shorts. I have an old Hulk Hogan bandana. I do the works. The best that I can. Not over the top. But I show up there, and there's probably 6 or 7 people actually dressed up for this thing. It's not a huge event or anything.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
and you got a shot at this point.
I'm thinking my odds are all right because I can cut a decent promo. Not to pat myself on the back, but I've done a few Hulk Hogan promos in my life in the basement. So I remember there was a girl actually dressed up as Sheamus who had a pretty fun costume on. I really don't remember anybody else's. So anyway, I find out that there's actually 2 parts to this whole deal. So the promo and costume contest is actually going to be for tickets to the Raw before WrestleMania, which was in Atlanta.
Wow.
Which would have been cool, and I would have been fine with that. But I was like, oh, well, what's the WrestleMania tickets for? They're going to do a trivia contest later on in the night with everybody there. It didn't matter if you dressed up for that or not. Just anybody who's there can participate in the trivia contest to win WrestleMania tickets. So I'm thinking, dang it. I don't really care about Raw. I really want the WrestleMania tickets.
Yeah, that's tough.
But, I get up there and do the promo anyway. I'm already dressed up, and I'm thinking, at least I can win the Raw tickets. I have a better chance of winning those. The trivia contest is a crapshoot. Who knows if I'll win that. So I get up there. I actually have a video of it. My wife recorded it. Yeah, and it was on the radio and everything. Tony Schiavone's holding the mic for me while I'm cutting a promo as Hulk Hogan. Yeah, he was hosting the whole night.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so that's pretty neat. I got to cut a promo with Tony Schiavone, and I win those. I win the Raw tickets.
Wow.
Yeah, fun, cool, exciting, but inside I'm like, man, it's not what I wanted.
Right.
So they do the trivia contest later in the night, and I think maybe 10 people entered the trivia contest, something like that. And I did. I entered the trivia contest, and they break us off into pairs. And they give you 5 WrestleMania matches, and you have 60 seconds to put them in order of the year that they happened, which
that's not bad.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
And I'm going last. My group is last, and I'm watching all the other groups. They're getting like WrestleMania main events, like Hogan versus Andre, Triple H versus Shawn Michaels versus Benoit, Austin versus Rock, whatever, the easy stuff. They get to our group, and it's 5 women's title matches from WrestleMania, which.
Oh no, that had to be brutal. They're all so similar.
They're all so similar, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, what year did Trish Stratus face Christy Hemme, and which year did Trish Stratus face Mickie James? Like, what year did Victoria face whoever? I don't know, man. I ended up getting 4 out of 5, and ended up winning the trivia contest too. Somehow.
No way.
Yes. So I won both tickets, and I will just want to say that I gave away the Raw tickets to the guy who placed second to me in the trivia contest. We were walking outside, and I was like, look, man, I feel bad about having both sets of tickets, so I'm going to WrestleMania. You have these. And they were floor seats to Raw. So they were good Raw tickets.
Wow.
Our WrestleMania tickets were like second row from the top of the Superdome. But I gave the Raw tickets away, kept the WrestleMania tickets, and finally something's going good in my life at this point in time.
So cool. Yeah, what an awesome story. What a great gesture of you to give the tickets of Raw away. And probably because you weren't that big of a fan of the current product.
I felt guilty. I don't want to win twice. Like that's too much. Someone else can have these. I don't need to go to both.
You would have been the Kenny Omega belt collector of all the prizes. They'd have been like, get this guy out of here. My gosh. It's like they're like clapping for you the second time. That's incredible. What an awesome story. I always feel like whenever there's a WrestleMania that someone goes to, they've always got an incredible, cool story tied into it. So that's awesome. What a cool deal that must have been.
It was once in a lifetime, that's for sure.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean, I've done those contests in the past, and I did one for Royal Rumble 2008, and I got to the finals, and I destroyed everybody. I did a Jim Ross impression, and then a kid got up there right at the end and did a Joey Styles, and he sounded exactly like Joey Styles. And at the end, people were giving me a clap, and I was like, nah, this guy, he's better. It's like, this guy was amazing. And they gave me, like, Stone Cold's brand new DVD came out, so they gave that to me. But it is nerve-wracking to get up
Not
there.
the same as Royal Rumble tickets.
No, they were like, don't worry, we got something that'll be just as good. And I'm like, okay, they've got 4 tickets. This is great. And they gave me Stone Cold's DVD. And I was like, all right, well, thanks.
It was a good DVD, though.
It was a good DVD. It was. Yeah, so that's crazy, though. What a cool story. I give you a lot of credit, because that is tough to do, to stand up there, especially no matter how comfortable you are doing a wrestling impression, to get up there and do an impression in front of a bunch of people. It had to be really, really. Thank God your wife was with.
And thank God I was at a bar and I had a couple beers before.
That is true. Yes, that probably would have helped.
It helped.
But wow, and also I wonder if you're doing Hulk Hogan, probably like Shivani's been calling Hogan's matches forever, so that probably helped a little bit as well.
It helped a little bit. Yeah, I could play into that, so that was fun.
That is very cool. Wow. So now you're on your way to WrestleMania. And I love that also. Like I'm the same way, where I always feel like whenever the going gets tough, here comes wrestling to bail me out. You know, there's like some random wrestling show. Like I'll never forget, like my father passed away, and we went to his funeral, and came home that night. My brother-in-law was like, are we going to watch some random TLC that was on that night? And I was like, the gall, right? It's my dad's funeral. And he's like, hey, wait a minute, let's not forget we have TLC to watch. But I watched it, and it was like this incredible show. I don't even remember anything of it, but I remember being like, for that few hours, I got to forget about what was going on.
That's right.
We have wrestling. So that's so cool that you got to go to that WrestleMania. That's what great story there.
Yeah, no, it was huge. I first thought was to take my co-host, my best friend Travis. So I called him up, and he had some work obligations that he could not get out of. I didn't even tell him I was doing any of this stuff beforehand, because I didn't want to I wanted to make sure I had the tickets before I even brought it up. So I called him that night after I won, and he's like, let me see what I can do. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it. So I ended up going with my brother-in-law. His name is Buck. Yeah, his name is Buck, and when I was dating my wife, I got to be friends with him. He was like in high school at the time, and because he was a big wrestling fan, and so like we had that instant connection. And he had never been to he'd been to a house show. We'd never been to a pay-per-view, much less a WrestleMania. And I thought this will be really cool to get to go with him. If I can't go with my best friend, let me take Buck along and give him like that once in a lifetime experience. So got to take him along for the ride.
That's amazing. Yeah, no, what a really cool thing. I can't even imagine how excited he must have been to get the call to go through.
He was.
You know, if we're comparing here, me with the big belly aching story about having to work, trying to be an adult, and being like, well, I have to work. Sorry. But you know, it's that had to be so exciting though. And so, did you guys plan like you guys were going to go straight to WrestleMania, or what was your guys' plan setting everything up for that weekend?
Well, since I was jobless and you know, these tickets were free and everything, there wasn't a ton of money in the budget to make a big weekend out of it. So, you know, I told Buck, look, man, I can afford to get us an Airbnb for a night in New Orleans. So, again, like I said, I lived in Atlanta at the time. It was about a 11-hour drive to New Orleans. I said, we're going to have to get up at 5 a.m. and you just hit the road, stop for gas and lunch, but that's it. Get there, Airbnb, straight to the Superdome, go to this Airbnb and crash and get up and come back home in the morning because we don't have much money to do anything else. And, you know, to his credit, he was like, absolutely, man, I'm all in. So that's what we did. Sunday morning of WrestleMania, we got in the car super early and just made the very long drive straight from Atlanta to New Orleans. And so there wasn't a lot of fun activities before the show, but at least we were going, you know?
Yeah, that's cool though. So 11 hours. So I can't even imagine, but you did. So you stayed over after WrestleMania.
We did. Yeah, no, we got the Airbnb. There's no way I was doing that drive.
I was thinking, I was like, that would be just the craziest stuff.
Absolutely not. No.
Yeah.
So it was like a decent, it's not too far from the Superdome. It's basically just, as big as the room I'm in right now.
Yeah.
Just like a couple cots and a shower and a little, microwave and a coffee maker in there. But we didn't need anything else because we were at WrestleMania for 7.5 hours, basically. So that was all we needed.
At least it's a WrestleMania. Like I've been to where I've done that to go to like an Extreme Rules, and then it's like that's not nearly as like, at least you were at like WrestleMania.
Right.
If nothing else, the set's amazing, and you get like these incredible entrances and tons of great moments. It's going to give you something at the end of it too. So that is really cool. I was so ironically enough, there was a show called Joey Janela's Spring Break. Now I'm not a big indie guy. When I go to these shows, my wife, I like indie wrestling. I grew up going to indie shows all the time, but as I kind of got older and started doing these WrestleMania shows, my wife and I just do pretty much the WrestleMania stuff, like the main WWE stuff. She'll give me an access. Maybe we'll do Raw after Mania. We'll do NXT. Those were like the three big things. Hall of Fame she did once and was like, I'm never doing you gave me Mr. Bob Backlund, Bruno Sammartino, and Donald Trump. I'm never going to Hall of Fame ever again. And so that was the end of that. And she, so we did. We agreed like, hey, we'll do the 3 or 4 wrestling things, and she'll pretty much whatever else she wants to do during that weekend. I just kind of leave it up to her. I know it's not the most popular amongst wrestling fans who do all that stuff, but in now being at home, I was like, all right, I got to at least have a couple of different things to try to build up my excitement for WrestleMania. So one of the things I did was I started going through, I was watching all of their YouTube videos. And what this actually did was lead me to people going to shows and putting up like vlogs and things. And I had not known this was like, I did this way back in the day. Like there's somewhere in the YouTube universe vlogs of me going to WrestleMania 27. But it's not really like there's no pictures on there, no thumbnails. It's just like random little videos here and there.
Yeah.
So I didn't know this was like a thing people really did until that weekend. And when that happened, I was like, next year for Mania 35, it's going to be here. I've got to try to start some sort of YouTube thing so I could vlog my WrestleMania trip and document that. And 3 months after WrestleMania is when Watchalong Wrestling kind of came through.
Okay.
So that was a cool piece. A few weeks before that, though, I was in the Wrestling Universe store in right here. It's in Queens, New York.
Yeah.
It's gained popularity due to the Wrestling Figure podcast. And who's in there but James Ellsworth, who is having a big match over that weekend for Joey Janela's Spring Break.
Wow.
With Matt Riddle.
Yeah.
And cuts. I'm not kidding you. Like, this was one of the biggest, well-built stories. And the storyline was, how could Matt Riddle put somebody in a head? How could he put James Ellsworth in a trademark chin lock because he has no chin?
Wow.
So I was there when they filmed James Ellsworth in the Wrestling Universe. And I was like, all right, I've got to order Joey Janela's Spring Break. So I start getting all these things. I'm ordering all these shows. I have like Joey Janela's Spring Break. I watched NXT TakeOver. I watched and Ring of Honor. Because the main event of Ring of Honor, Supercard of Honor that year is Kenny Omega against Cody. Because it's right before they started doing All In.
Yeah.
So I'm ready to go. And they just launched the new Ring of Honor on-demand service. So it was only like $10 to get it. And then you get all this extra stuff. So I order the Joey Janela Spring Break. That's after NXT. NXT was good that year. I think it was like you had Tommaso Ciampa and Gargano's submission match. It was like one of their big ones.
Yep.
And also it was the show that actually got a 5-star. That match got a 5-star. And the ladder match earlier in the night got a 5-star rating from Dave Meltzer, which like was unheard of for WWE. Yeah. So that was really good. Joey Janela Swing Break. I saw the Matt Riddle match. It lasted like 3 minutes. I fall dead asleep. I ordered the show, dead asleep, slept through the entire show, woke up and I was like, oh my God. And I couldn't watch it because there was like no replay.
Was there a replay?
No. So it was totally like, God, this is terrible. Next night, the Ring of Honor service goes completely kaput, so I miss I can't get Supercard of Honor. They say, oh, we'll just refund you. But at that stage, I sat there for hours trying to get the thing to work.
Dude, this weekend is cursed for you, man.
It was a brutal weekend. But WrestleMania still comes around, and I was excited for it. You know, I think I'm weird in that I'm probably the only person who's nostalgic for 2018 to 2019 WWE, even though it was just a few years ago.
Yeah.
I think because I was so going to so many different shows and really involved
Makes
in
sense.
it, that I was like into that. I was into it a lot. So what was it about the current product that you felt you weren't that into at the time?
Oh, man, that's hard to kind of quantify. I guess I've been watching wrestling, pretty much hardcore since, like I said, since I was 5 years old. And but I would say, I guess it kind of been building for a few years. Part of it was I moved to Atlanta in 2014, and back where I previously lived in Augusta, Georgia, I had a huge group of friends that were all into wrestling. We had this community of people. We get together at my house, usually on Monday nights, and watch Raw. For years we would do it. And then, the people would rotate, but there were always a few core people, and it was just a thing. And sometimes it was just in the background. Sometimes we were just hanging out, eating pizza or playing games or doing something else. But it was always Monday nights Raw, and we'd order the pay-per-views too. So that was definitely a part of it. And it just felt like, to me, a lot of things in the product. I don't know if this will make sense, but the product started to feel like the Harlem Globetrotters to me, whereas it was just kind of a show with a bunch of moves, and it almost felt like the storylines just didn't even matter. Like, you would buy into things repeatedly, characters, gimmicks, storylines for a few weeks, then they just get dropped. And I know that's wrestling. It happens all the time, but it just felt like it was happening more and more. And I was like, why am I getting invested in stuff? Why am I still watching this thing that makes me angry more often than I enjoy it? There's obviously still things I can enjoy, but if it was feeling like more often a chore to watch it, and it was disappointing me more and more. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It totally does. Yeah. And I think at this point too, in WWE, and I don't know if this was you, but as I was going back and trying to watch some of the lead up to this and doing what I could to watch some of they showed the video packages before the matches. I remember feeling at this point really a lot of, and I hate to be that guy, but a lot of Roman fatigue.
Yes, that's a huge part of it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, now we're on year 4 of him in the main event being rejected, and this one, forget
the same thing.
They totally rejected. So I think that for me was like, hey, I can get into a lot of the stuff underneath, but I know Roman's going to be, and they even were giving you the fans, they were giving you Nakamura, AJ Styles,
right?
But you knew at the end of the night it was going to be the big dog, usually in there with Brock Lesnar, who had the title forever but wasn't even on the show at all, pretty much. And that was definitely tough.
One thing that I was watching a lot, which is hilarious because I feel like no one else was, but I was watching 205 Live every single week. I made it a point to watch that every single week because it was simple. It was just 2 or 3 matches that were always pretty good. There was a little bit of basic storylines, and it was because, Vince McMahon was not paying attention to 205 Live. Right. Nobody was paying attention to it. So they could kind of get away with whatever. And so, ever since the Cruiserweight Classic, man, I watch 205 Live every week, even up to this point. So I'll talk about it when we talk about the pre-show. But that's one of the matches I was most hyped for, was the Cruiserweight title match on this show.
Well, and I think one of the big problems with 205 Live was that it was always filmed live after SmackDown.
Terrible decision.
Horrible. And then they'd give you, if you ever went to a SmackDown taping, they would tell you, hey, after the show, stick around through 205 Live because you're going to get this great match or main event that you didn't even get during SmackDown. So they'd hold off on the big stars till after 205 Live to get people to stick around. And everyone would just kind of be on their phones, walking around, amped. Whereas, if you did it before SmackDown, or even if you did it at a small venue on its own, I think it could have got a really great following.
I never understood why they didn't do that. Never understood.
It was totally crazy that they really did. They dropped the ball with that entirely. And I do think at this stage, they had a lot of really bad luck because Enzo Amore was the champion for them for a bit.
Right.
He gets let go. Then Rich Swann was the champion. He gets let go. So it was
that's true.
They had some bad luck in 2018.
That is true.
But yeah, so let's get into the show proper now.
So do it.
Show, what matches do you? Because I do think going into this show, everything was really coming together. You had Ronda Rousey's first match. AJ Styles Nakamura was built as this epic dream match, which was weird in WWE to suddenly be like, hey, they had this great match in Japan. It's going to be amazing here. And we're acknowledging that the old stuff happened, which was an interesting kind of change for them. You also had Charlotte and her only having, I think, one pay-per-view loss. I think they were trying to build it that she hadn't lost, but she had.
Yeah.
Going up against Asuka, who hadn't lost at all. A lot of really interesting stuff culminating here at WrestleMania. What was some of the things that you were looking most forward to about this show?
Everything you just said, for sure. That I was intrigued, of course, by what was going to happen with Undertaker and Cena doing the podcast. You know, that was a big reason why I felt like it would be kind of kismet for me to be there at this show to see the Undertaker come back after leaving his gear in the ring at WrestleMania 33. So that was a huge part of it. Definitely Rousey and Angle versus Triple H and Stephanie. Like, I just had a feeling that was going to be really special. And I think you, as well as so many people in the world, were huge Ronda Rousey fans. We were fascinated by her from her UFC run, and it's kind of crazy how much she's cooled off here 5 years later. But it's, you know, when we were standing outside of the Superdome waiting to get in, there were two people that you could tell the crowd was there for, and one was Ronda Rousey. That's the most shirts I saw outside of the arena was Ronda Rousey shirts, and the other one was Rusev. Rusev was the other most over person. Every 5 minutes there was Rusev Day, Rusev Day, Rusev Day chants outside the arena. You know, you always hear outside the arena everybody doing the woos and the whats and everything. This year at Mania, it was Rusev Day all through the night.
That's incredible. Yeah, what a fun. I remember going to the Rumble. They were selling Rusev Day calendars, which was like 365 days. Every day had Rusev Day.
That's great.
Got it. So it did.
Love that.
Really over, and it was one you could tell they really didn't want to necessarily have the act get so over.
Nope.
But everybody, I mean, even on this show, it's like the second he hits that me, everybody just goes completely nuts, and that is so much fun. I always think that's such a cool piece of going to shows live, is to see who the crowd is really getting behind. You know, I've been there SummerSlam 2015, and the crowd is, the whole time you're outside, people New Day rocks, and it's like, wow, people really like the New Day. Like, it's almost like this, like, sometime like, wow, it's so cool to see these people organically get over. So that's a lot of fun. I remember Rusev Day being a big deal, and of course, going into the show, Daniel Bryan is also back and cleared. What were you a Daniel Bryan fan, and were you excited to be there at this show for such a big moment for him?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was the other thing that I was most excited for. Absolutely. I was so sad, so devastated when he had to retire and pack it up in 2016. And it really felt, I mean, you really didn't think he was ever going to be able to compete again. Certainly not in WWE, certainly not going to get cleared for them. So it just kind of came out of nowhere that he did. And he's going to be here in this marquee matchup for WrestleMania. And so absolutely, that was one of the ones I was most excited for. And I never really, trying to think, I don't think I ever went to a show that was like in the peak of the Yes movement. I went to some house shows when he was still a heel world champion, right when he turned heel, and I think he faced like Sheamus in a cage match or something at a house show. It was a really weird house show main event.
Famous.
Yeah. Always, yeah. They were always against each other. So I never got to experience the Yes movement, like a really big Yes chant. So I was excited because I knew it was going to be epic here at this Mania for his comeback.
Yeah, I think him getting the comeback was something that made it so hard for me, because I was at the Raw where
full circle at WrestleMania 30, which you were at.
Right. So I was at the Raw where Cena picks him to be his opponent at SummerSlam 2013. That's an incredible Raw. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's at the Barclays Center.
Oh, I remember that. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. Then I went to SummerSlam 2013 to see him beat John Cena for the title. Then I was at WrestleMania 30, and then I met him in like January of 2016.
No way.
Told him that my wife and I went to go to WrestleMania 30, and I think my wife asked, and I was mortified, like, was he ever returning? Because I was like, that's not the question. He doesn't want to answer that, right? It's like, but he was so cool about it and was talking to us like, yeah, I'm really working on it. And I really think 3 days later, he retired from from WWE. So to hear that he was back teaming with my all-time fave, Shane O'Mac, I was like, what a dream that would have been to be there for.
Yeah.
And it just didn't happen. But yeah, that definitely, and we'll definitely get into it. But that certainly going into it, I'm sure was a big. I bet a lot of people were doing the too. I'm sure
there was a lot of that going on, no question.
Awesome. So before we get into the main show, you've gone back. I have also found the pre-show matches too. I had forgotten about them. Then you told me you recently were able to come across the DVD of this show. I
told you yesterday. I texted you. It was fate. I was at a used bookstore and I went by the wrestling DVDs as I do when I go in there. And there was WrestleMania 34. And I had been rewatching the show to get ready for this podcast. And I was bummed because Peacock doesn't have all these old pre-shows and kickoff shows anymore. It has the new ones ever since they've been on Peacock for a couple years now. But from 2018, it doesn't have any of the kickoff shows. And I was like, I really wanted to watch those. So DVD was
yeah,
it was $4.99. Grabbed it and watched them last night.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that I was able to find them, and it's interesting. The way they did this was I think the start of I guess they did 33, maybe the same thing, but that starts. They're in the midst of this now. The Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal that's been presented as a big deal for the first couple of years is now kind of on a pre-show, and now it's on WrestleMania
SmackDown, right?
So, but this one was an interesting one. You had 30 men in this match, and this is right where they're starting to ramp up Matt Hardy again because they've got the rights to the broken character after not having it in the beginning. So now he's woken Matt Hardy instead of broken Matt Hardy. But what was it like? Were you guys in the building for this match?
We were, yep, and it was definitely. Maybe a quarter full, maybe a third, not even half for sure. But man, I always enjoyed the pre-show. I like seeing the jobbers, the workhorses, the jamokes. I enjoy that, man. I did some math. You said there were 30 people in there. You want to guess how many are still in the company 5 years later?
Oh gosh, man, I 10?
7.
Wow.
And two of those were fired and then rehired, Gallows and Anderson. So
right. Wow, that's crazy.
Well, that is crazy.
Yeah.
So
I love Battle Royal though because I prefer Battle Royal where everyone gets on as opposed to this I
agree.
Showcase thing they're doing this year. It's like just bring if you're gonna do it which is just clearly an added match, just do it and bring everyone on.
I tell you who was not excited watching it back was JR and Jim Ross specifically on commentary for this match. Seemed like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world but doing commentary for this Andre Battle Royal. Did you notice that?
Yeah, well, it was interesting because they bring him out for 33 in the main event, like 2 weeks after his wife untimely passes. This great
moment.
Yeah. And I remember being like, that was really cool. They had him do the main event. And then they bring him in for this, which is like, the random Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal on the pre-show with Byron Saxton, who just keeps saying how honor it is to work with JR and King, like over and over and over and over. I feel like he doesn't even have anything else to say other than
doesn't.
And you could tell, Jim Ross probably felt, I assume, a little insulted that he's being brought in to just be this random match.
Exactly.
And it was also like you couldn't have given him anything else like on the show. There's about 20 matches. Like you could have got something.
Right. And Kane, I was shocked to see Kane in this. Poor Kane. It's just in this pre-show Battle Royal.
At one point, he eliminates, I think it's Baron Corbin, and I was like, whoa, Kane's there? Like, I didn't even see him in the mass of...
Right.
Yeah, that was very weird. And then he's kind of just like... And he's in the main event, or the world title match, at the Rumble 2 months earlier.
Yes! And he's in the pre-show Battle Royal.
Yeah. And so I'm like, man, poor Kane.
Okay. But Matt Hardy winning was fun. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
My one funny story with that is, like I said, it was maybe a quarter full at this point. About 30 minutes later, the person who is in the seats next to us, this woman comes and sits next to us, and she's there by herself. And, me and Buck just talked to her for a minute, and we're like, hey, what are you excited for? What are you here to see? She's like, oh, I can't wait to see Matt Hardy. I love the Hardy Boys. The Hardy Boys are my favorite. I can't wait to see the Hardy Boys. And I'm like, well, Matt Hardy just already won the Battle Royal. And she was like, you're kidding me. I said, Nope, it already happened. And she left maybe halfway through the WrestleMania. She didn't even stay through the whole show.
Wow. She was devastated. That was her
So
guy.
weird. Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I know there was a lot of people getting in late to that because if I remember correctly, there was like a pre-WrestleMania party or show outside of the venue
There was.
to get people like, I don't know if you guys saw that at all.
We, we saw where it happened afterward. Somehow we missed it. I didn't get through it, and we just went ahead and got in the line to get in through the door. So I do know that was going on, and they had some stuff, and yeah.
Well, and when they had that Battle Royal, one of the things I loved is it starts the build to the John Cena. He's in the crowd. He's one of the members of the fans. And I love that he shows up. Everyone's getting an autograph of him. Everyone's talking with him. And then at one point, the camera gets on him, and he just goes like, "Whoa!" Like, that's me. I'm on the camera. I'm on the screen. Like, he was so, and pounding beers too. Like the best part about this is like, they were so trying to make people think the match wasn't going to happen to the end of time. Like, they were like, we're going to make you think there's no way this is going to happen so much that we're even going to let John drink while he's hanging out in the crowd before the match.
That's what makes it so cool. I mean, and that was a shoot. Like, we noticed it. I'm sure they talked about it like before even the kickoff matches start, because even from as high up as we were, we could look down and we were like, that's John Cena. Because like everyone, all the fans were crowding around him, and he was taking selfies. He was signing autographs with people. So I can't imagine how cool it was for people that were on the floor to have that moment, because Cena doesn't do like autograph signings. He doesn't do meet and greets a ton anymore. These days, he's a movie star, for crying out loud. So like, how awesome is it that they got to go do that for free? They weren't even paying like Fitterman Sports $1,000 to do all this.
Yeah.
That was awesome for them.
So true. Yeah. I always think back to, if I was at this show, I think I'd have such a hard time paying attention, because I remember I went to a Met game once and Mick Foley was like a couple of rows over, and I watched him the whole game. I didn't even care about the game. I was just watching Mick Foley, and I feel like if I was there and John Cena was sitting in the crowd, I'd be watching John enjoying the show more than the actual show. There could be a distraction sitting in the crowd.
It would be.
There, right?
Yep. But it's kudos to John for doing it. That's why he's one of the best, that he committed to the bit like that.
He's totally engaged too. He's not on his phone. He's watching everything. He's reacting. So that was cool. Next up on the show is the aforementioned cruiserweight title match between Cedric Alexander and Mustafa Ali. You said you were really looking forward to this one going into it.
Very good match. I enjoyed watching it back. Huge Cedric Alexander fan since that cruiserweight tournament. Did you watch the cruiserweight tournament back in the day?
Oh, Dabushi, yeah, that was awesome. Yeah,
that was awesome.
Yeah.
So I was excited for these guys. I loved Ali too, and still a big fan of his. So it was cool for them to have their moment. Watching it back, I think they really made the most of the opportunity. The crowd was not into it at first, but they did win them over, and you could hear them getting into it towards the end of it. And that's about as best as you can ask for one of these pre-show matches. So we don't have to talk about it too much, because I know we got a ton to talk about. But thumbs up, enjoyed it. Really good pre-show match.
Was really good, absolutely. And it felt like finally they gave Cedric Alexander the belt. It felt like they took the belt. Took a while. They finally give it to him. Next up was a women's battle royal. Absolutely loaded with talent women's battle royal. You have Sasha Banks, Bayley, Becky Lynch. Insane to think next year Becky Lynch would be in the main event. Here she is as a throwaway. She's not even one of the top people in the battle royal. Like, she's just there as fodder. Good little battle royal. I personally forgot how much I enjoyed Naomi. Naomi wins this one. And I liked her whole deal with the music and everything. And it felt like, I don't know why they gave up on her, because I thought she had something there.
Yeah, and it felt like they weren't doing anything with her, and then she won this battle royal. I was like, okay, they're going to put her kind of up in that tier with Sasha and Becky and Bayley and Charlotte. And yeah, they never did. Nothing really came of this. It was very odd. But it was cool to see her have that moment. She'll always have that, the first women's battle royal winner at WrestleMania. So kudos for that. My one story I'll tell about this real quick. So as I mentioned, I'm originally from Augusta, Georgia. And if you are a sports fan at all, when you think of Augusta, Georgia, you think of the Masters golf tournament. That is what Augusta is known for. And I am not a golf fan, but I'm a Masters fan. I will watch the Masters tournament every year. It's a big deal. Much like you will have festivities for WrestleMania every week. My wife and I will do Masters Week, and we'll wear our clothes and watch the tournament, whatever. It's dumb, but it is what it is. Buck is the same way. His family, his dad used to be a pro golfer for a little while, and so Buck had dreams of being a golfer. Masters Sunday, the final round of the tournament, is WrestleMania Sunday this year. And the guy who ended up winning the Masters this year in 2018, his name was Patrick Reed. And he was actually a pretty close friend of Buck's family. They actually know him fairly well. And so we were literally in the Superdome on our phones watching the Masters, the final rounds of the tournament, because it ends usually around 6:30 or 7 o'clock. So we're watching that during this pre-show match. Probably the only two people in the Superdome watching a golf tournament during the women's battle royal match, because as Patrick Reed, we're big Patrick Reed fans, and he wins the Masters, so we're like cheering for that while this women's battle royal was going on. So that's my memories of the women's battle royal.
It's that is really cool, and it's funny because if you were home, do you think you would have watched the Masters or WrestleMania or a 2-screen experience?
Well, thankfully the tournament ended during the pre-show, so probably would have just skipped the pre-show, to be honest, or maybe had it on my laptop or something like that. Yeah,
no, that makes sense. That is really cool, and the crowd at the pre-show, I feel like the first real moment, they get into Matt Hardy's win a little because they're doing the but I think they're really into this idea of Bayley and Sasha Banks having this face-off at the end of the women's battle royal before Naomi comes in and eventually wins. So it felt like the crowd it felt like that was the first time watching it where it felt like, okay, this is WrestleMania and most of the people are in there.
And they'd had, years of storyline from NXT up to this point. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that was cool. Going into the actual, I personally love the entire glitz and glam of New Orleans. I love that they brought back the Kid Rock. Thomas great. And then they brought in like another New Orleans song by him from like deep in his catalog where he was just like, there's just like this one verse of his song where it's like down in New Orleans. And that's like the only thing you hear of that one. So they were very big into Kid Rock. What did you feel about them bringing that back around for the second WrestleMania?
Well, he's a Hall of Famer, so
he went right.
It was So they got to represent Kid Rock for that. It's fine, It's a good. Me and Travis always call them good wrestling songs. Like it's not something I'm gonna listen to in the car ever by myself, but when I'm sitting there in the Superdome, like Kid Rock, bring it on, man! I'm rocking out to it.
Steve and I always refer to it as WWE Rock, its own genre.
It is.
Kid Rock, Creed, Saliva.
Yeah.
Guys are like, but yeah, I like that they were playing off the nostalgia, even though it was just 4 years earlier, which it does, in retrospect, feel weird they came right back. I think it had to do with something with New Orleans
that too.
Celebration of the city or something, but weird they just returned it right back there from doing it just 4 years prior. But
and now they haven't been back since then.
They haven't been back since. I think they will be at some point. I think they love doing it. It's great because everything is so local in New Orleans. So literally, if you're going to New Orleans beforehand and you're on that street, Bourbon Street, it's like you walk up and down there, you see a bunch of wrestlers because there really, isn't that anywhere else to go. So
yeah, we'll talk about it after the show. I'll say our quick story about going out after the show. So.
Oh, you went out? Oh, great. I'm glad. Yeah. Hold that. So the show gets started here with I'd say probably one of the top 5 best opening matches in Mania history. I think this one was probably my second favorite match on the entire show. Triple threat match between The Miz, Finn Balor, and Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins doing his every year he changes WrestleMania gear. I think this one was Game of Thrones inspired. Finn Balor comes out, has an entrance with the LGBT community, has them going it very nice. Balor Club for everyone. But this is a great match. I really enjoyed this a lot.
Absolutely. I thought it was a perfect opener. And it's funny because I don't feel like there was a ton of storyline going into it. And you might think, oh, man, I'd rather see Seth and Finn Balor just go one-on-one. But Miz held his own in there. I mean, he deserved to be in there, and he was just as big a part of it as all three of those guys. They just went balls to the wall, just a ton of action, ton of high spots. Did you catch this during commentary? Because I totally forgot it. do you remember who Miz beat for that IC title?
I was there. He beat Roman Reigns.
That was mind blowing. 5 years later, like
here's another, something even more mind boggling. I'm almost mind blowing. That match is the final match, I think, that Roman Reigns was pinned for a title.
Because it's the Miz.
Yeah, the Miz. And I remember Miz beat him clean, and it was like party like it's 1999 in the stands. Chest bumping each other.
Absolutely.
Everyone was so happy.
I'm a huge Miz fan, like back to the MTV Challenge days. So absolutely.
I'm so happy he's on this show. He's such an underrated. You think about, he had Mizdow. This show he has the B team.
The B team. I forgot about the B team also.
I completely forgot. He came out, I was like, who is, oh gosh. And all of those people, when they're with him, he brought them up. Like, I think he did a really good job having them with him. And then usually right after he was done with them, they just kind of dissipated. So, like, I think he's a really underappreciated talent. And I agree. I think I was glad he was in this match. And he gets the Seth Rollins gets such an old school booking. Seth Rollins gets the win here. And that really continues his build and ascension until now he wins the Rumble and eventually goes for the world title against Lesnar at the next year's meeting.
Next year. Yep. He goes on the rise. But yeah, very good match. I'd say definitely. It might be the number 2. It's definitely one of the highlights of this show.
Yeah, for sure. Next up, you had Asuka going up against Charlotte Flair. Charlotte Flair does end Asuka's undefeated streak. Were you disappointed that Asuka lost this match?
Pretty hugely disappointed by that. Yeah, man. I said I watched 205 Live a lot. I was pretty hardcore watching NXT. Basically, I think that was the last show I kind of gave up watching week to week was NXT. So I was, Asuka's whole run, huge Asuka fan. And I'll say this, a lot of people don't like Charlotte. I'm a huge Charlotte fan as well. Yep. Like, there's been times where I would argue that Charlotte is the best worker in the company, man or woman. I think she has oftentimes been that. And I think she gets a lot of undeserved hate, kind of sort of the same way Triple H used to get because they're always on top. But guess what? She deserves it. She's one of the best too. But man, why do this whole streak gimmick? Why build it up so big to not ever give her the title? Like, just baffling, and one of many baffling decisions throughout the night. But this one was just like, really?
It was nuts. It was in particularly because they protected her streak so much. She was in the mixed match challenge, had to win the entire thing. In the Rumble, had to win that. They didn't let her lose at all. And then they go in there, and I think if Charlotte really was undefeated on pay-per-views, I think that this match could have been second from the top in terms of like the biggest deal there. And instead you just have Charlotte beat her pretty unceremoniously. And then the worst part is they do the deal at the end where she says Charlotte was ready for Asuka. And then John Cena runs out of the crowd because he hears Undertaker's there. So they pivot off of it so fast, this huge moment, and just move on to the next thing. I feel like they should have held off on Cena and let that breathe a little bit, that Charlotte just beat Asuka a little bit longer for sure.
Yeah, it really felt like it was building up to be this really cool night because you had a Japanese woman and a Japanese man in both of these title matches. And it was like, there'd never been Japanese WWE champions in these roles. So it was like, it really felt like this groundbreaking moment. Felt like WWE was kind of going to like build this brand in Japan and like build these stars where they could go tour in Japan maybe and have this whole fan base over there. And that did not happen tonight.
Oh, no, in retrospect, they could have done Eddie Benoit. Asuka wins here, and then Shinsuke comes out, wins in the end, and they both go with the belts and kind of hold it. That'd have been really cool. And you're right, it just does not. Well, it wasn't meant to be. And the worst part, Charlotte holds on to the belt. Do you remember how Charlotte lost the belt?
I couldn't tell you. No.
So 2 nights later at SmackDown, the Iconics debut, they lay out Charlotte. Carmella comes in, cashes in.
Money in the Bank.
So all that, and that was just to do that. I mean, in all honesty, maybe you will end the streak that way. Can you imagine the heat on Carmella if she's the one who eventually beats Asuka? Though I know the internet would have exploded.
I like that.
That would have been. I like that one. I think that would have been good. Like no one could beat her, and then all of a sudden this happens. Like her first night as the champ.
I have some other booking ideas for later in the night. I love that one. I think that makes a lot more sense than what we got. But still a decent match. I
Yeah.
enjoyed watching it back. The ending sucks, but it's a good match. So show is still going strong at this point.
I agree.
Yeah.
We're well on our way to one of the better WrestleManias at this point. Especially because the next one is a really fun Fatal 4-Way. If you had told me before watching this who was in the Fatal 4-Way, I was taken back to my time doing WrestleMania trivia on the bump and being like, I really hope they don't ask me any WrestleMania 34. That's what sunk me was a WrestleMania 34 question. But if you asked me to name the 4 competitors, I could have been here for a month trying to figure out who the 4th one was. Because Bobby Roode, I had no clue that he was already on the roster and actually was pushed at some point.
Yeah, that's funny because I remember him being in as well because I was a big TNA fan, a big Bobby Roode fan, and I was just excited for him to have that WrestleMania moment, to have that have that played on the big WrestleMania stage. I knew there was no chance he was winning this match, but I was like, yeah, man, Bobby Roode getting his WrestleMania entrance, good for him.
And he was so great in NXT.
Absolutely. He was awesome in NXT.
They just dropped the ball bringing him in as a face because the character was perfect for a heel.
Yep. Terrible decision.
So, yeah, it's Jinder Mahal, Randy Orton, Bobby Roode, and Rusev. Rusev doing Rusev Day, everything that as we talked about earlier. And boy, is it when Rusev comes out, it's like the place was ready for him. They were ready to explode for him. In retrospect, Jinder Mahal gets the win here. Do you think they should have just went all the way with Rusev?
Are you kidding me? Of course they should have. This was actually my first bathroom break match, which you gotta do it at some point in a 5-hour show. You can't avoid it. And I didn't realize. I just went as soon as Charlotte and Asuka was over. I made a beeline for it. I was trying to be back, but didn't make it back for it. I did when I heard the Rusev entrance. I ran like to the nearest gateway I could get in and like peek my head in the curtain because I knew the pop was going to be epic. I wanted to see that. But I missed a lot of the match, so it was fun to watch it back here all these years later. It's okay. It's fine. But it's just, again, a baffling decision. Like Jinder Mahal, one of the worst WWE champions of all time. I get it. He's a heel, and this is crazy enough, him coming off that WWE Championship run just a few months before this. So I understand wanting to reward that, give him the U.S. title. But gosh, in hindsight, that crowd would have erupted, would have blown the roof off of the Superdome had Rusev actually gotten the win there. So
yeah,
weird decision in hindsight.
It was one of the worst decisions of the whole evening, I thought. And one of the other part that's frustrating about it is, you thought, at least afterwards, I remember thinking, all right, they're going to go with Jinder again, but now on like the mid card, he loses the belt the very next night to returning Jeff Hardy.
Yeah.
Only has the belt for one day. I'm like, what are they doing?
What is the point?
That was nuts.
You went going back to earlier, why I kind of gave up watching the modern product. Just so many of these, like, why am I investing in this? Nothing matters.
Right. And it clearly, it wouldn't have mattered at all. Like, it wasn't like, I think Randy Orton goes in as champion here. He wasn't having like a historic reign or anything like that. He had no plans for Jinder. The crowd clearly is going nuts for Rusev the whole weekend. Give them an amazing moment, similar to the one for I was about to say Matt Cardona, Zack Ryder at WrestleMania 32. Even if you lose it the next night, at least that night you get this incredible moment and this great pop of, oh my God, our guy did it. Especially because throughout the night, you're not getting many of those.
You're not.
It's like you could have given him something here.
But we did get it in the next match, I will say.
Yeah. Next match. So this is interesting because I have a quick story about this match. There's a book that came out about WrestleMania 34. And the book, I believe it's called like The Mania of WrestleMania or something that I should know the name of it. But in that book, they actually talk about how the plan for Kurt Angle at this WrestleMania was to actually go and lose to Jason Jordan clean in the middle of the ring, to put him over and get him ready for the future.
Wow.
And Batista has said that the plan for this match was supposed to be Batista and Ronda against Triple H and Stephanie.
Oh, my.
And then the communication broke down. So if you kind of connect the pieces, Jordan probably gets hurt, and then they they never respect poor Dave. Just bring in Kurt Angle, have him do the match instead, and don't even call Dave to let him know that, hey, they're not going to do it. In retrospect, that would have been so great because you could have set up that match towards next year's Batista versus Triple H match.
Right. No, I never heard that before. That is fascinating.
Yeah, really, really cool stuff.
But I like the way things worked out, though. It worked out okay, and you had Kurt Angle on TV every week as the GM, so it ended up making sense. And there's definitely Batista would have been cool, would have been awesome, but I feel like there's a better connection between Angle and Rousey as far as their backgrounds and them coming together here.
And it's very clear if you watch the match that all of them are really helping Ronda, but I think Ronda sees a lot in Kurt, and you could tell she respects him a lot, so she was really excited for him. And I think this moment at this match was really the first one where we all looked at ourselves sitting in our living room. We had a little WrestleMania party. My wife and I looked at each other and we're like, we should have been there for that. That would have been awesome. And it was an incredible over 20-minute match. And I don't think anybody could have predicted that Ronda was going to look that good and to have such a highly competitive match. And kudos to Stephanie McMahon. She was great in this match.
Yes, she was. She's the unsung hero of this match. And what I love about this match is this is what I want wrestling to be. I'm a huge fan. Like I said, I love 205 Live. I love seeing the guys do dives and big spots and 450s and everything. This match was as old school 1970s, 80s wrestling as it gets, distracting the referee, pulling the tag partner off the apron, just getting the cheapest heat possible, really slow build-ups to things, hot tags. That's what I love about wrestling. It's not all about, trying to actually recreate an actual sport. It's about creating sports entertainment. And that's what this match was at its best. They did every trick in the book to make Ronda look strong and look great. 5 years later, watching this, I got chill bumps when Ronda and Triple H had their face off in the ring. Like, it was awesome.
That was the greatest. That was the best moment of it was, Triple H like kind of egging her on and Ronda coming in to go after him. I was like, oh man, like she comes across incredible.
Yes.
And I'm just like, they really they did not do a good job. They should have presented her as a big deal for every single appearance she had. And instead they were like, I think too hung up on the idea of trying to make her just like everyone else and not allowing her to come across as the big star that she was. And now you come across, 5 years later, and they're doing everything they can to do that for guys like Logan Paul. And it's like, if they'd done that for Ronda, I think, it would have worked out a lot better because the crowd unfortunately turns on Ronda.
Yeah. So like 5 years later since her debut, and, she took a little break in between, went and had a baby, but is back now full time. Like, how do you rank Ronda's run so far? Like what grade would you give her WWE run?
It's a great question. I know for us, so there's two moments in our fandom where my wife and I were visibly annoyed that the crowd turned on someone. First was at Royal Rumble 2019 when the crowd starts booing Ronda Rousey, and we're standing around like, how can you boo? Are you kidding me? The second one was at the first Grand Slam AEW did when my Queens, New York crowd starts booing Cody Rhodes. And so now I'm loving that Cody Rhodes is such a big deal in WWE because I was so annoyed that the crowd turned that night. But yeah, Ronda, it's tough. I think her first year was great. I think, think that first year was great. I think I gave that like probably an A- or a B+. But unfortunately, since she's come back, it just feels like I don't think they really know what to do with her. It doesn't seem like she's that invested. I don't even know.
She doesn't feel like a star anymore.
Not at all. She's just thrown it. She's like she's no different than Raquel Rodriguez Raquel Gonzalez. It might be Raquel Gonzalez over on random females. It's terrible. And I now I'd say they maybe a C+. I mean, it hasn't even been that good at all. I feel like this last year.
I was going to say like a B- probably, which is insane when if you were to say that, watching this show just in a bubble, but yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. I'd say the highlight of her run is the end of the Royal Rumble 2018 and this match right here.
And this match, and I think being the first women's main event, 1 year after this, I think you got to count that. But
and getting in pay-per-view too, and that being built around.
Yes.
involvement, I think, was very cool. She did a lot during that first year.
But this is match of the night.
Yeah,
no question.
For sure match of the night. And it's crazy to me that we've never gotten, and I don't know that we will, because I'm not sure if Ronda's sticking around after this year's Mania, never going to get the one-on-one Becky Lynch-Ronda Rousey match. And we had an opportunity to have it this year.
I think that'll go down in the history books. Like, you think about, we never got Hogan and Flair in WWE, on pay-per-view. You never got Hogan and Austin, and never got Ronda and Becky. You could put that in there in those matches. Like, why did we never get that?
Crazy. Next up on the show, and I feel bad for this spot for these guys, especially the Usos.
Tough spot.
Because the Usos, as they come out here, I'm reminded this is the first main card WrestleMania appearance of the Usos. Crazy, because especially 2013 to 2014, I think they were one of the bigger acts in all of WWE. And yeah, that match was on the pre-show. Crazy.
Dude, we talked about it. You were recently on Talking Taker, and you mentioned how you were down since day one with the Usos, and hung out with them a little bit when you were working Access. And I was the same. Like, I remember when they very first debuted with Tamina, and they just had no personality. They were kind of bad. And then they just started, you started watching them, and if you paid attention to them on the undercard, you're like, man, these kids are good. And then they started doing the face paint and the chanting and everything, and they were awesome. I freaking loved them during that run. And so getting to see them finally make it to WrestleMania, I think they did talk about it on TV, but I remember just being, as a fan, watching, it is so absurd that they've never been on WrestleMania, because they've been awesome for 5 years at this point, and they just keep getting booted to the pre-show. And that's actually one of the great things about this Mania is, besides the Cruiserweight title, every single title is defended on the main card, and that never happens anymore.
Never. You even have the two different tag title matches.
Both tag titles, both undercard titles, both women's and both men's, all on the show, which was, as an old school person, I love that all the titles are defended on this show.
Yeah, that's very cool. Obviously the Bludgeon Brothers get the big win here. They get a total showcase. The match itself isn't even that long. It's only about 5 minutes, but it was sad, seeing Luke Harper here get such a big moment, and remembering, obviously it's hard to watch his matches and not feel just over sadness, for him and his family due to his tragic passing. It's really tough, honestly.
It is, but I think in hindsight, it's really cool that I believe this is his final Mania, and he gets to go out with a win here, win a tag team title. And that's got to be really cool for his family to be able to go back and watch that, and to know that legacy that's always there in the WrestleMania history books, that he got to win a tag team championship at WrestleMania. That's very rare and very special. So I appreciated that watching it back. I got to say, on a lighter note, the New Day, they come out, they're doing this pancake entrance, and they come out with all the little people dressed up as pancakes. I was listening to commentary. How did nobody on commentary say that they were coming out with a bunch of short stacks?
That would have been great.
How did nobody? That's where you need King on commentary.
Ready. He's in the back screaming at the monitor, but for sure. That would have been great. Yes, that was, and that's another thing, is not only did Bludgeon Brothers get the win, but they got a win over the two of the top teams.
That's true.
For years in WWE. So this was cool, only from a standpoint of all three teams deserved to be on the show. It was cool they got it, but they got the absolute death spot, because they go right from Ronda to this, and then that leads us to the culmination of the John Cena Undertaker deal. What at this point was any part of you thinking? Well, I guess even before we get there, you and Travis launched a show here about the Undertaker's career. Assuming, like most of us, the Undertaker's career had wrapped up at the end of WrestleMania 33. And for a year, I got to go around myself personally and say I was at the Undertaker's final match. And now it looks like he's coming back. What were you guys thinking at the time while doing this show about Undertaker potentially coming back?
we started the show. The idea hatched after we watched WrestleMania 33 in 2017 together and saw that match. We hatched the idea then. We launched the show in August of 2017. So we'd been doing it for, about 8 months up to this point, up to this match. And at first, I think we were both saying, don't do this. No. That was such a perfect ending. That was awesome. We don't need this. We don't want this. Just leave it be. Let it rest in peace. As time went on, as the weeks went on, as Cena was building this on TV, it became clear that it was going to happen. So I think our mindset kind of changed. We're like, it's clear Taker wants to do this. He's not being forced to do it at this point in his career and his life. And if there's anybody he's going to have a decent match with, it's probably going to be somebody like John Cena. So like, I'm open to it. Let's see what happens. Let's let it play out. It's not just any kind of match. It's a match with Cena. That's a dream match that they only had one other pay-per-view match up to this point in history, right, which is wild.
And so that's like very young, right? Isn't it like 2003-ish?
Vengeance 03. Yep.
Yeah. So you're an Undertaker encyclopedia. You got that ready to go. But yeah, that I agree. I was the only thing for me, I was like, this going into the show, if I knew we were going to get it and thinking we were, was like the biggest match they could do. And if you were going to do it, I don't know. I mean, I like the idea of John Cena doing the fan thing. It was fun. It was interesting. But I don't know why you wouldn't build this up as the Undertaker's return match against John Cena, the biggest match they could probably do at that stage. And instead, they just didn't build it up at all.
Well, but they did build it up. I mean, Cena's out there every week cutting promos, and like they're not saying that it's happening, but we all know it's happening. And I dig that. It's fine to have that 2% thought in your brain of like, maybe it's not going to happen. And so that kind of gets you in there. And again, they're not selling pay-per-views at this point. It's on the network. We're all already subscribed to the network. We're all going to watch WrestleMania. So they're not having to worry about selling tickets or selling pay-per-views. So they can kind of do more stuff like this. That's my opinion.
It's a good point. And it was a sold-out venue anyway. It's not like you were trying to get the last couple, you couldn't get into the building.
Yeah.
My favorite part of this whole deal here is the tease with Elias.
Yes.
Elias, it's such a shame the pandemic happened for him because he depended so much on crowd participation. I don't think he's ever fully came back from that.
It's a great point.
But that weekend, I remember seeing the footage WWE put online of him on Bourbon Street doing a surprise concert and just thinking like, man, if you're out there on Bourbon Street and Elias is doing a random pop-up show, like how insane that must be. People must have been going crazy for that. He was just such a really cool act, and I liked his back and forth with John Cena, and I just wish they had it now because, you had it at Raw 25 where Elias lays him out. You had it there at WrestleMania 34 where they have their little back and forth here. WrestleMania 35, they have a back and forth, and they never fully got the big blow off. God, that would have been I really liked Elias. I think they could have continued that there. But yeah, when the lights go out, did you think in a million years that Elias was going to be sitting there with his little guitar?
I don't know. I don't think so. But I thought it was a great little tease, to keep the tease running even longer. It was perfect use of Elias because here's the thing with Elias. It's not great when the bell rings. He's not that great of a wrestler, but and that's fine. Like there's a spot on the card for him to do his thing and do his deal. And this is it. This is a perfect use of Elias to have him come out, get the cheap heat. He plays a little bit of House of the Rising Sun, which is, classic New Orleans song. So he plays that as he's coming down to the ring. And I got to mention this from commentary because I noticed it. Michael Cole says, when John Cena is beating Elias up, he says, Elias was hoping for a Johnny bye-bye tonight, but it'll be Elias bye-bye if this keeps up. And that is a deep cut Bruce Springsteen reference. As a massive Bruce Springsteen fan, I popped for that. Johnny Bye Bye is like a B-side deep cut Springsteen song. And
Michael Cole who says this?
Michael Cole says this, and he's a huge Bruce Springsteen fan. That's why he says boss time every time Sasha Banks comes out.
Wow. Okay.
That's a Springsteen reference, and he referenced a deep cut Springsteen song. So I popped watching this on the couch back home.
He may have only been making it for you too.
Maybe.
Lord knows, I would have never. This is where
it's over most people's heads. Yeah.
I mean, even me, I didn't even know. I thought "Take Her Easy" was an original. So my whole thing with music is my classic music stuff is not the greatest. So I didn't realize he was even doing that song as a tribute to New Orleans. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I want to point this out too. To go along with the build, here's the program for Mania 34. Very first page in there. Take a look at it there.
Oh, wow. That is cool.
It's got Cena and Taker, but it's got a big question mark over Taker. So even in the program, they don't give away whether or not this match is going to happen. And I thought that was just an excellent touch because they could have just had it in the program, would have given away the whole gimmick of the night. But they went that extra mile with saying, I don't know, maybe it's going to happen. You have to wait and see.
And in the past, they've given it away so many times, too, where like they wouldn't go that extra mile. So that's really cool that they did that. What a moment it must have been, though, to be there for that Undertaker entrance, because the crowd is just insanely loud with the Undertaker chants, and everyone's going nuts. And you must have just been so happy to see the dead man come back and finally do make that appearance against Cena.
It was so you couldn't ask for anything more. They do everything right. They have that lightning strike, and there's his hat and gloves from last year appearing in the ring magically. Cena is just selling it perfectly. He is like, what have I done? He's been this cocky, arrogant heel. He's been such a jackass trying to call out The Undertaker, being so cocky and confident. And finally, he realized it's all caught up to him. He didn't think Taker would actually show up. And there he is. Taker takes his time coming out, but we've got this just epic walk down from him. And then he takes his robe off, and he looks in phenomenal shape. So much better than he looked a year before.
Yeah, it's an incredible moment. I've gone back to be perfectly honest, I did not like this the first time I saw it. Mm-hmm. Your guys' show on it actually gave me a new appreciation when I first heard you guys breaking it down. I went back at that moment and watched it, and now it's probably become one of my more favorite. Going back and seeing the whole bit with Elias. The idea I love about that is once Cena doesn't think he's getting Undertaker, he immediately hops the rail to go back to his seat, which I think is the best part. That he was fully prepared to watch the rest of the show from the crowd. And then Undertaker comes in. The match itself is his shortest match. I'll never forget it.
It's a squash.
It's a total squash. And Cena is the one who put that whole thing together. He's the one who created this entire thing. Undertaker has recently come out and said that he was ready for a 45-minute brawl and thought it would have been great. He was ready for it. He thought they would have tore the house down, but it just wasn't in the cards. In retrospect, I completely get what Cena was doing here. He wanted Undertaker to look great, and he knew in 2 minutes and 50 seconds or however long he's going to look great.
Dude, I feel the exact same way. It was not what anyone in the world was expecting to happen, to have John Cena. He did one offensive move in the entire match, and Undertaker just wrecks him. No one was expecting that, but it makes Undertaker look like $1 million. I don't think Undertaker was ready to go 45 minutes. I know he keeps saying that these days. I think he was probably ready to go 15, 20, right. And have a typical main event style match. But God, looking at how long this show was, how drawn out the show was, the fact that this match is just, quick and fast and a blowout, it just makes it stand out even more and makes it even more fun and makes it so much more unique. It's so unexpected. And when you take it in with the full package from Cena being there in the crowd to the Elias thing, the fake out to Taker coming in and squashing him. If you take that whole picture in there, it's a great, 20 minutes of storyline and action in there. If you just go from bell to bell, it's nothing. But if you take the whole picture, it's a great angle.
Yeah, it's a great WrestleMania moment.
Great WrestleMania moment.
Yeah, it's I completely agree. And even though Undertaker's a much older guy than Cena here, he was around a lot more than Cena was after this. All the Saudi shows he was on, he had a couple of different tag things. So it was almost like Cena was getting ready to gain his confidence back.
That's right.
Why Cena's so proud of the match. It showed Undertaker you could go for the next 10 years and come out and just do the dead man thing and everyone's happy.
That's what we said on the podcast afterward. Like, he could do this for another 5 or 10 years. Just, have a big monster heel. He goes in there and does a 5-minute match with him. If that's what he wants to do, we're going to be here for it. I would have loved it if it ended at Mania 33, but if he wants to keep it going and do more fun stuff, more power to him. And we're going to sit here and enjoy it.
Absolutely. So that was the Undertaker and John Cena wrap things up there. Again, a really fun piece of this. If you haven't seen this, I'd highly recommend going and checking out that match. I thought it was a lot of fun. And Undertaker continues his reign now for the next 2 years. So you guys, I remember the joke on your show would always be, well, he's coming back.
Travis, my co-host, he made this big Excel spreadsheet with all 170 of Taker's matches, but when we first started the show, so we would keep track of them as we went along, and that was our joke. It was like, well, got to add another one to the spreadsheet I think he had maybe 9-10 more, since from the point that we started. So including
the really fun gauntlet for the trophy match.
Oh, classic.
Yeah, it was the most random thing ever. Next up, though, another incredible moment here. Daniel Bryan and Shane O'Mac take on Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. What was it like to be there to see the return of Daniel Bryan to the ring for the first time in so many years?
Man, very cool. Like I said, I never had been a part of the original Yes movement, and I had never had the chance to be in the crowd for that. So to be able to finally be able to do the Yes chant with Daniel Bryan was amazing. I gotta say though, man, we can agree to disagree here. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. This is the match where the show really started to kind of fall apart for me, and I was disappointed with the overall match that we got here once they do the whole stretcher angle with Daniel Bryan after we've been waiting for years to see him in the ring, and then they make us wait even longer to put him on the stretcher and have you just talked about your boy Shane McMahon, but boy, he in my opinion was not at his best here in this match, having to carry the in-ring work here. It was watching it live, I didn't care for it. Watching it back, I didn't care for it. I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like if you turn off the show right after Daniel Bryan comes back, Shane comes out doing the Here Comes the Money. He goes over, he gives his wife and kids a kiss. He acknowledges Hunter and Steph's kids. Then out comes Daniel Bryan. The place goes nuts. Everyone place doing the Yes. If you turned off that WrestleMania right at that moment, I think it would have been it's a top WrestleMania. So many broke down. Unfortunately, there was 2 hours left of the show. And so I don't know because I wasn't there. You were at that. I think it had to get tough to be there for that last 2 hours because everything there at this. If I'm after this, I feel like everything kind of drags a little bit.
Well, you got to remember too. Me and Buck had been there since we'd been up since 5 a.m, and we'd driven 10 hours. So we sat through the pre-show. So yeah, it had been a long day. I wish they sold coffee there. I went around looking for coffee in the Superdome. I couldn't find any, but I needed something to pick me up there.
And 10 hours too. I mean, that's it. You can't even listen to wrestling themes and chat for 10 hours. I mean, there's only so much time you could do. That's a long drive.
Exactly.
Wow.
But yeah, this match just didn't gel, and it's I love all 4 guys. I mean, I have I'm a Shane McMahon fan as well. He's had plenty of great matches. Kevin and Sammy, of course, you can't argue with that. They're gonna have an awesome spot on this year's WrestleMania. But this one, it just the whole layout of the match was just odd to do this. I've never liked it when they do that whole fake stretcher angle and then the guy comes back in and
it's terrible.
It doesn't work. But in fairness, once Daniel Bryan does get in there, the match does pick up, and it's awesome and heartwarming to see him be able to be back in there and being able to do the thing that he loves and that he's one of the best in the world at. So
that is true. Yeah. And I will say, for me, one of the big pieces of it, with him being taken out right away, I understand. I think it was a harken back to the WrestleMania 30 match where they did the same thing in the same building, come out, but you do it right in the beginning. And at this point, Shane is like in bed. He's in rough shape. I don't know. I think he had diverticulitis or something. He's like puffing. He's having a really hard time. Little did we know he'd be primed for like a top spot in the company for the next year and a half. They were just loving this shit. Even I was kind of like, all right, the guy's like 50. I mean, I like, the here comes the money and the whole deal. But he'd be beating guys. I'm stunned he didn't get a title match at a pay-per-view because they were really leading, I think, at some point that way.
The way you use Shane is it's no DQ, no rules, and he's like the underdog, like having to do crazy spots like Hell in a Cell with Undertaker or with Kurt Angle when he's going through the glass. Like that's when Shane's awesome. Where you're putting Shane in just a handicap match here, and there's like no chairs, no kendo sticks, no tables. He did have an awesome match with AJ a couple years before this, so maybe I'm wrong, but man, just for some reason this one was not one of his. It's not going on the Shane McMahon DVD, in my opinion.
Now, the only good spot is that he does go up for the coast to coast, and when
he does hit that,
rise. And Sami Zayn, God bless him, helps him because like Shane can't get all the way there. That's why there's usually like a garbage can there. But so Sami Zayn like propels his body up to take it. It looks awesome. Like it's one of the best coast to coast there. But then Daniel Bryan comes back in, and 5 years later he's just had a Iron Man match, and he's
right
still in there competing with the best of them. So glad that he was able to do it. Eventually main evented another Mania too. So glad to see that he's been able to pick it back up. But yeah,
exactly. It's not bad, but it's just kind of it wasn't what you wanted it to be.
No, not at all. Next match was the match they didn't another one kind of in the twists and turns. He doesn't mention this in the book, but the Nia Jax Alexa Bliss storyline was supposed to be centered around one Enzo Amore. If you remember, before Enzo left, he and Nia were starting their deal, and the whole deal was supposed to be that he would eventually put Nia down and go with Alexa Bliss or something. But poor Enzo was unceremoniously dismissed. So they built up this match, but I like the idea at least that it's crazy if you look at this, that 3 of the 4 horsewomen were in the opening battle royal with the pre-show battle royal with Sasha Bailey and Becky, but he still had 3 different matches with women on the roster. At one point, I think Alexa Bliss was seen as one of the tippy top people in the company, and Nia too, I guess, for that matter.
That's a great point. That the 4 horsewomen, only one of them are on the main card of this show. That's wild. I didn't even pay attention to that, but yeah, that's kind of crazy in hindsight. This was my second bathroom break of the night. I couldn't care less about Nia Jax. Alexa Bliss, I think she's pretty good. She can hold her own in there, and she's had some good matches, but this whole feud was weird to me. Like, they're trying to build Nia Jax as this sympathetic baby face, like overcoming bullying and everything. I get it. I support that whole story, but Nia just she's not someone I can get behind. She does not scream likable to me, and she's not a good wrestler. She's not. As a non-wrestler, someone who's never been in the ring, I'll just go ahead and say she's not good at being a wrestler. So
she kills Mickie James to start this match too. I mean,
can you imagine if we had Alexa versus Mickie James? What a better moment this would have been. Like, what a better spot. You could do a similar story where Alexa's bullying Mickie James for being old and not being able to go anymore. And you're going to get a much better match out of it than you got with this.
Yeah, I also just don't know if fat shaming is the right thing to do at all. Like, I just don't think it's very nice. You could easily do somebody being old. You could easily do that and still garner the same type of heat. It felt uncomfortable to watch some of the promos of Alexa Bliss, especially because you knew in real life the two of them were best friends. So it was tough to kind of watch. Alexa Bliss was one of our favorites.
Yeah.
Our engagement photo is myself doing the Shawn Michaels with the world title belt, and my wife behind me doing the Alexa Bliss with the women's title belt. So
That's
we were
cool.
next to two, and we were really kind of bummed to see Nia lose the belt here. But we would be at SummerSlam a few months after this when Alexa faced Ronda. So for us, my wife has
That's cool.
that was like one she was into.
Nice. I like that.
Next up, I'm sorry?
No, the less said, the better. Move on to the next thing.
Next up, you had AJ Styles against Shinsuke Nakamura. This match, I know a lot of people were really hoping would be in the main event spot. Did you think at all, at any time, there'd be any chance this was going to be in the main event?
No, I don't think so.
I actually thought there was a chance that the main event would have ended. John Cena would still be sitting there. Boom, lights go out. Out comes Undertaker. And they were going to make him sit through the whole show waiting for the Undertaker. And then he came out. So I remember
I have that in my notes to talk about because let's talk about that at the end.
Okay.
At the end. Yeah.
For me, I thought for sure that was going to be the main event. Was going to be the whole thing was you don't think he's coming the whole show, and then boom, there comes Undertaker. This match, AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura. I gotta be honest, I did not see the New Japan match that everyone was talking about, raving about, and really excited about.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
Yeah, but I hear it's a very good match.
It's very good. We come from the same time period. So, do you remember 1993, SummerSlam 93? There's a match on that card, Shawn Michaels and Mr. Perfect. And the build for that match basically was similar to this. It was like, this is going to be one of the best matches of all time. Buy this pay-per-view because you're going to see a 5-star match. And Shawn Michaels and Mr. Perfect, for some reason, you would think they would have a 5-star match, but it's not. It's good, but it's not great.
Right.
And that's how I felt watching this. Is like the whole storyline is these guys are going to have a 5-star match, and they don't. It's good, but something just doesn't click. I don't know if it's just the crowd is deflated. Maybe Nakamura is just not quite over with the main roster. He was hugely over in NXT. I don't think he ever was really fully connected with the main roster yet. Just something about this match. It's probably 3.5 stars, but it's not 5 stars, and that's why it's kind of a letdown.
Pretty sure you nailed exactly their star rating. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think you're exactly what Dave Meltzer gave was 3.5, and that's exactly how it feels. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing that I thought was the coolest moment of this entire match is actually Shinsuke Nakamura's entrance.
Yes.
And at our wedding, we actually hired a violinist to come in, and we entered to Shinsuke Nakamura's entrance.
Oh, that's awesome.
So it was very, very cool. She did the whole thing in the beginning. I wanted her to actually come in with us and be doing the violin with us while we came in. But sometimes I get a little over the top with some of my antics and over like the lady was like, I don't actually want to walk in with the brand new husband and wife playing the violinist. So we had her kind of start things off, do the violin, and then he did, and then it's his music really kind of hit. And then as we came in, all of our bridesmaids and groomsmen kind of surrounded us and did the the whole song for him.
And were you wearing a full red leather suit at the
time? In retrospect, that would have been the way to do it. I did try on I don't know how I attempted this. I failed it, but I tried to do the drop down that he does. And I am in no way, shape, or form in any shape to do that. And my mother audibly in the background screaming, "You're gonna split here." But
I love that.
I did do it. So Nakamura was our guy. I do think one of the things that really hurt Nakamura a lot is that he had a title match, I think at SummerSlam 2017 against Jinder, and he didn't win the title. And I don't know if that, because in Philly, when he wins the Rumble, he's like big time over. But this one, it didn't. I think people also just really liked AJ Styles.
Yeah.
So I think that really helped a lot. But when it comes to Nakamura coming out here, I remember we looked at each other, we're like, wow, with the electric guitar, that would have just been awesome. That was so cool. And I like that it was Nita Strauss, who was the guitarist for Alice Cooper, who
Yeah.
was one part of WrestleMania way back in the day.
No, awesome entrance. He does look like a star. And again, it just goes back to just what is the thought process between this booking? Because yeah, I'm a huge AJ Styles fan too. It's cool that he won, but why give Nakamura the Royal Rumble win? Why give him this epic entrance if you're not trying to make him a star? Because he's not going to be a star if he loses the championship. He's never been champion before. If he'd been champion before and he loses at WrestleMania, it's one thing, but he's never been the champion, and he goes in, he's got all this momentum, and he loses. And they turn him heel. So I think that's their process. It's like, oh, we're protecting him by turning him heel. But he doesn't work as a heel. He's so much more fun as this eccentric baby face who's doing all this weird dancing and moves and all this stuff. Like, that's what people love about him. You don't want to boo the guy. So it just, like, I could not believe, especially after Asuka losing, that Nakamura lost too. It's just.
Especially because there was a lot of the stars from New Japan were in the building to see Nakamura and Asuka win the belts, and none of them, like Okada's there for this show. So it was really a lot there, and it just didn't come out.
Yeah, really disappointing.
Unfortunately, Nakamura does not get it done there. Next up on the show, you have Braun Strowman and a mystery partner going up against The Bar. So I know a lot of people, in retrospect, feel very fondly of Nicholas. The idea of him, everyone loves that this whole thing happened. But at the time, I remember this being, especially because they saved it for the co-main event spot. I know it's the come-down match between the two title matches. But come on. I mean, at the end of the day, they built this up as such a big deal. And at the end of the day, it's Nicholas, the 8-year-old kid. What were you thinking at this stage?
I remember thinking, it's fun. It's cool. I remember thinking, if I was 10 years old, I would think this is the coolest thing in the world. So I remember being a kid watching those first few WrestleManias and trying to think back to that and being like, wow, that's pretty awesome. And I get what they're doing. The whole gimmick is Braun doesn't need a partner. He can do it on his own. So why not just pick just a kid from the audience and do it? So it's fun. It's a little silly and goofy, but that's fine. Wrestling can be that sometimes. And it's, it was really weird with Strowman because I'm not a huge Strowman fan, but you couldn't deny how over he was, especially at this point. Like, you could have made the case that he should have main evented this WrestleMania. Maybe been in a triple threat with Brock and Lesnar, or Brock and Roman. Like, he was more popular than Roman Reigns was at this point in time. So it's a little bit crazy that he's winning the tag team titles with a kid right here.
Yeah, I mean, his booking at WrestleMania through the years is terrible.
It sucks.
Despite being such a big part of the show and like the 1A to the top babyface, he's just like doing nothing on these shows. He's usually in the pre-show battle royals. And here he is winning the title with the kid.
Yeah.
I remember the people in my living room popping huge for it. I remember being very disappointed. And part of it is everyone building up who was good. If you even notice, once they announce who his partner is, the crowd starts doing the bro, because Riddle was in the crowd.
Yeah.
So everyone thought it was going to be him. People thought it was going to be Okada. And that just starts the big roll effect of like all these random people. It's never going to be. For me, I just wanted it to be Kurt Hawkins. I
felt the same way.
I thought he was on this big losing streak. You could have had him be like, I could even win the titles with the biggest loser in the entire company. Out comes Kurt Hawkins, and they win, and that's how he breaks the streak of the losing streak he had, and the two of them could have been the champions. That was who I wanted it to be. But it's funny because when he goes to look for the kid in the crowd, he passes all the NXT wrestlers. So I remember Trent Seven there, No Way Jose, and I'm like, he's going to pick one of them. But he ends up picking Nicholas. And I will say now as a father, I have a greater appreciation for the fact that Nicholas is, I don't know if you know, I think you do, John Cone, referee John Cone's son, and referee John Cone is the referee in the match. So now knowing this, watching this back, I just watched John Cone the entire time, and you could tell he's really helping Nicholas along. It's really nice, actually.
I did the same thing when I was watching it because I didn't know that 5 years ago, but watching it now, I recognize that, and I thought that was neat. I wish they'd had Nicholas do one thing in the match, like even like just like stomp on Cesaro's feet, like when he gets tagged in and run away after that, or like poke him in the eye or do something, like, because he never has any physical interaction, and it would have made it like so much better if he had just done one little spot. I don't want him to take a bump, but like do like, get down on all fours and have Braun like push Cesaro or Sheamus like over him, like do something silly like that where he actually does something in the match. I think it would have made it even cooler.
I think because the crowd goes nuts once he enters the ring.
Yeah.
And I think what you do is you have him go around the ring, do the run around the ring. Cesaro's chasing him, run around, and then boom, Braun hits him, and Braun hits
anything. Yes.
I am stunned we didn't get an Elite 2-pack of Braun Strowman and Nicholas.
Me too. Or it doesn't even have, you can have like just it's a Braun Strowman figure and it comes with like a little tiny Nicholas, just like it doesn't even have to be articulated or anything. Like, yeah, it felt like that should have happened.
For sure. Next up, main event time. Again, we're getting it. I think this is, well, so it ends up being, I think it's the only match to main event WrestleMania on 3 separate occasions. Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. And my word, the crowd is not having any of Brock Lesnar and Roman Reigns on this night. They go out there, they try their best, they do kill each other in the process, but the crowd is doing everything else except this. This is one of my big problems with the WrestleMania crowd, actually, is that I do feel like sometimes they feel almost entitled to act a fool. And here they are. They're doing beach balls. They're doing CM Punk. They're doing everything else except for caring about this match at all.
This crowd came prepared to not care about this match. They never gave it a chance because, like you said, the beach balls came out when the bell rang. There were half a dozen beach balls, people blowing them up, tossing them up in the air as soon as the match happened. And it's hard to remember like 5 years ago just how much people could not care less about this match. It's hard to believe because I feel like Roman's the most over guy in the company right now. Everybody cares about the bloodline and this whole storyline, which you would not. The vast difference between how much people care about Roman Reigns now and 5 years ago is insane.
And it's crazy to think that they would even bring this match back to sell out like 2 huge stadium shows with WrestleMania 38, SummerSlam 2022.
Oh, they just kept doing it.
Crazy. And one of the things here for me, I do remember watching this match and being elated that Brock Lesnar won the title, like being like full born, like so pumped up, and everyone else just like, dude, no, like we just went through this whole storyline about how he's never going to be there, he's not there, and then you come to find out watching the documentary that it was a last minute change, and he shows up in the backstage and throws the world title belt at Vince McMahon, the Universal title belt at Vince McMahon, because he's prepared to go to UFC and not be there. It's
so bizarre. It's arguably the worst ending in WrestleMania history, I would say. It's so deflating to have. And I'm not against a heel winning at WrestleMania. Like, you could make a case for it. You could make it work. And it's not like Roman was a tremendous babyface. You could argue Roman was the heel and Brock is the babyface here in some ways. But it's so bizarre to just have Brock get the win after Roman's been bloodied and beaten and just has this gusher, coming down and blood all over his face. And then Brock leaves. We watch the WrestleMania recap video, and then we spend 5 minutes at the end watching Roman walk out of the arena just sad and defeated. Like, that's how you went off the air with WrestleMania? Yeah. That's what was pitched backstage? Like, this is how we're going to end the biggest show of the year in front of our biggest crowd of the year is Roman Reigns walking sadly to the back. Like, you can do that on Backlash or on TLC, but you don't do that at WrestleMania.
No. In retrospect, they'd have been better off ending with Nakamura, AJ Styles. AJ gets the win. The confetti pours down. The balloons fall down, and boom, he gives him the low blow and Nakamura walks out with his head held high, and you're at least left with a cliffhanger of, well, now what happens? As opposed to the crowd was just like, screw this, like, we're done.
Or, like you said, what if they do all that same crap with Roman and Brock, and we cut to the crowd, Cena is just like, what the heck? I've been sitting here all night. We've seen him just get drunk all night. He's just so upset. He's so depressed. And he hops the barrier, asks for a mic. He says, are you serious? This is really going to happen. And they end with that. They end with Undertaker coming out and giving Cena the tombstone, winning that match and do the exact same match real quick at the end of the show. How much better of an ending is that?
That is so much. At least then people go home happy and don't go home with like the contemplation of how much longer they're going to be able to put up with Roman Reigns. Because I mean, I can't at that stage. I think people really, I can't. Like, and you were there. I'm sure people leaving there like, what the heck? That really kind of sucked.
That was the whole atmosphere walking out of the arena. Everyone was just like, what was that? Because was that really the end? I thought something else was going to happen. There was no cheering. All the excitement that was there before the night started, it was so deflated walking out of the arena.
Well, you had mentioned your night didn't end. You guys, you said you went over to Bourbon Street afterwards.
We did. We walked out of there and we were like, well, that kind of sucked, that ending. Like, we got to redeem ourselves. So yeah, we followed the crowd. We walked down to Bourbon Street, and it was cool because, as you mentioned when you were there for 30, like there was just a ton of wrestling fans there. And like if you've ever been to Bourbon Street, there's just a ton of bars, a ton of restaurants, and they're all there all night long. And they were all playing wrestling theme songs. There were all sorts of people in cosplay dressed up as wrestling characters. And so we got some pizza, we got a couple beers and walked around Bourbon Street. And the highlight of the night, all the places were playing wrestling music, and we walked by one place, and they were playing Buff Bagwell's theme song, WCW Buff Daddy. And we were like, that's weird. And we looked up, and up on the balcony of this restaurant is Buff Bagwell standing out there with his top hat, tossing beads out to people, posing and flexing. And we're like, all right, here's Buff Bagwell at 12:30 in the morning on WrestleMania Sunday. And my buddy Buck, my brother-in-law Buck, he got some beads from Buff Bagwell.
Wow, that is really interesting and
really random.
Well, Alex, thanks so much. This has been so much fun. If you have any closing thoughts here on how to kind of wrap things up here with WrestleMania 34, what are the lasting memories you have of this show?
I think unquestionably the Undertaker Cena stuff. I think that was a highlight of it. I think that has aged really well, and it's really fun to go back and look at. Again, the Ronda Angle Triple H Stephanie stuff is definitely the highlight of the night. It's the most fun match of the night. I think the thing that I remember most about it is just freaking how long the show is. And it's kind of, I think this and the next year is really the impetus that's brought us to the 2-year WrestleManias, or 2-day WrestleManias. This one felt like 2 years. And so now we have 2-day WrestleManias. And I think overall, as a viewer, 2-day WrestleManias are a positive. I know you're going to WrestleMania, you're going to both days, so it'll be interesting to hear as a fan what you think about attending a 2-day WrestleMania is like. But as a viewer, a 2-day WrestleMania has been a huge positive, and I think we have this year's show to thank for that.
Yeah, it's funny because I had gone back. I know you had gone to this show. It was 5 hours and 2-minute runtime, I think it is. I went back and looked at the year after, and it's even longer.
It is.
It is. I think it's 5 hours, 20 minutes, and I'll never forget.
It goes into the next day.
It does. The main event doesn't even take the ring until midnight, and the trains stopped at midnight. So anybody who was there was like stranded if you took public transportation for like 3 hours. Just a crazy, crazy experience. But I will say, I'm glad at least that, what a cool story you have associated with this show. Thank you for sharing all that with us. It really is what makes these wrestling trips so much fun. And one of the reasons I love doing this channel is there's so many stories behind the stories. People see, oh, here's my WrestleMania story. And it's so much more and so much bigger than just the WrestleMania event itself.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool part about it. I'll always hold that place in my heart for that time in my life it came, and doing the promo with Tony Schiavone as the reason why I got the tickets there. So yeah, it'll always hold a special place in my heart. So I very much enjoyed reliving it with you, and I appreciate you inviting me on here. It's always fun to chat with you and to go through these things with you. So I appreciate it.
Absolutely, and I know that when I initially proposed this saga of you coming on here, chatting with me on New Year's, I had talked about a 3-parter and having you come back and talk about your trip to SummerSlam last year. So I'd love to do that, and I think it'd be something everyone really would enjoy here on the channel.
I'm in. Yeah, we'll talk about SummerSlam from last year. I'll bring Travis along as well.
Oh.
Yeah, so we'll do it. We'll do a 3-way, and we appreciate you joining us. Your fans of your channel should check out the latest Talking Taker, because you joined us to talk about WrestleMania 29 memories on there. We did a watch along of that Taker CM Punk match. So check out Talking Taker podcast here on YouTube, or if you want to listen to the audio, you can do that on Spotify or Apple Podcast or whatever. But watch the video. You're watching this on YouTube, go watch our YouTube channel as well.
Yeah, I don't have any podcast link. For me, it's all about just doing it on the YouTube. So I always watch the YouTubes. I've tried to do a couple of the watch-alongs you guys have done of the Rumble matches too, and it's a lot of fun. And me being on that show with you guys to look at Undertaker versus CM Punk, one of the most underrated and really, truly great matches at WrestleMania history, was a really fun deal and a great sister piece to the piece that I just put up about WrestleMania 29, because we don't get into anything really about that show. We just talk about kind of work and access and everything, all the adventures that came along with that weekend. So I think, definitely check that out. And for folks who are looking forward to your future show, that'll be on WrestleMania weekend. That'll be out, right?
Yeah, it should drop on April 1st. So it'll be out there, and hope everybody checks that out. Talking Taker, wherever you find podcasts, or here on YouTube, or at Talking Taker on all the social media. So give us a listen, check us out, give us a follow. If you like this, you'll enjoy that.
Yeah, no, can't recommend Alex and Travis's podcast enough. I've been a fan for a long time. One of the only podcasts I've ever listened to where I wrote into for several weeks, and got a big kick out of doing that. So that was a lot of fun. And many of those shows, those Taker matches, are real hidden gems that they really refresh your memory on. So can't recommend them enough. And Alex, thanks again for joining us here and talking about a really interesting WrestleMania. And I think one that if people go back to, they'll really remember quite fondly, especially if you stop it right after Daniel Bryan makes his entrance. I just watch Nakamura's entrance after that.
You know what? If you could break it off into little 30-minute, 45-minute chunks, it goes down a lot easier than having to watch it all at once. So.
Well, and I think that's why I enjoyed it. I watched it every morning through my entire week, looking
that's
at
right.
Kind of the morning coffee. My time there breaking down that whole show. So it's been good, and if nothing else, it looks incredibly appealing. That entrance with the mask is very cool.
I dug it. Yep, I was a big fan of it.
Very cool. Well, thanks so much, Alex. Really appreciate you joining us here. And until next time, everyone, make sure you subscribe both to Talking Taker as well as Watchalong Wrestling, and we'll see you guys in the next video.